Those of us married to a person who's come out as transgender find ourselves in a unique position of sitting in the front row of the anti-trans movement. And as the spouse of a male to female trans woman, we get the VIP section and backstage passes. The anti-trans movement isn't only in the US, but this hateful side of our society sticks out like a judgmental, misinformed, sore thumb. Welcome, listeners, to Straight Wife Trans Life. I'm Lisa, and in this episode, I want to kind of tell you about a term that I just learned myself. Transmisogyny. What is it, and what to do about it? And a quick heads up that the content might be uncomfortable, but I hope you stick around and learn something. I am sharing as I myself learn. All right, here we go. When you put the terms transphobia and misogyny together, you get transmisogyny. The University of California, Santa Barbara has a resource center for sexual and gender diversity, and on its webpage, which is fantastic, and I will link it in this episode description, it describes transmisogyny as the intersecting oppressions and discriminations of transphobia and misogyny. So, transphobia discriminates against trans people for their gender expression. And misogyny is hatred against women and this notion that women are less than men, basically, other genders. And this is verbatim from the UC Santa Barbara site. Transmisogyny works to portray trans women and trans feminine people as less than, questions and devalues their gender identity, and sexualizes their femininity. And that last part is what spurred my curiosity to take a closer look at transphobia and misogyny. There is this ingrained obsession with sexuality and trans women in our culture, and it is just in plain sight, right? It just feels like it is everywhere. So if you just pay attention to the reactions to advertising campaigns for upcoming Pride Month, for example. So there's a transgender woman wearing a bathing suit for a sports brand. And then recently there was a beer brand using a transgender woman for an advertisement. And the comments online underneath the articles about these two advertisements, it just seemed to feed off of some made-up concept that trans women are out to erase women or somehow lure men into their web of confusing feminine appeal. And there's also this concept of grooming. So from my own experience out in the real world with my real transgender spouse, it is often men who seem the most uncomfortable around her. Even my spouse's own dad has told her, I don't want to talk to you unless you present yourself as male. I don't want to see you dressed as a female, and what will our family think? It's just, it's awful. And I have to add that women are also negative. Women can have, misogynistic qualities. And with my father-in-law being an exception, this transphobia and misogyny that I've seen mainly applies to strangers, right? And I think that for a lot of people who buy into this, hatred, most of it stems from fear of the unknown, right? Like anything, we're scared of things that we don't know. I don't know what this is, so I have to hate it because that's what the media tells me, or that's what the comments say under this article. Must be true, right? Or this is what my parents raised me to think. But people who actually know a transgender person like my spouse, our male and our female friends, our lesbian and gay friends, they don't care because they understand that my spouse is just a person. And, if I explain to a straight male acquaintance who might not have met my spouse yet as a transgender woman, if I just say, like, my spouse identifies as a lesbian and poses no threat, I can actually see men sort of ease up with their body language. Should I have to do that? Do I need to say anything? No, but I'm willing to do that if it helps reduce this, this transphobia or this misogyny that is kind of just part of the culture, sadly to say. Like, it's just part of it. And the problem with transphobia and misogyny towards transgender women is that it comes from people who don't know. They don't know transgender people. They're just misinformed, highly insecure, and these are the people who say, like, oh, this is a free country, but you have to look a certain way and act a certain way. And it doesn't make any sense. It's a bunch of hypocrisy. And sadly, these are the people who are leading the anti-trans movement. It really baffles me. Like, what are people afraid of? And the worst part is how scary it is for transgender people, because it leads to violence against transgender people. It leads to suicide amongst transgender people. They can lose their jobs. They can lose their rights. They can lose access to gender-affirming health care. And Black trans women and Latina trans women are the majority who experience violence or lose their life to violence against transgender people. And I'll link more information about that. I'm trying to kind of keep this in a little package, but it's a really big topic. So minority transgender women suffer most. And my transgender spouse, my spouse is actually a minority, and I worry about her. I had a husband for 13 years, and the last 2 years, my spouse and my best friend had the courage to come out as a transgender person, and it has been really difficult to watch as society tries to tear down anybody who is transgender adults, transgender youth. It's frightening, honestly. So the ACLU, which stands for American Civil Liberties Union, has a really clear and well-formatted map on its website that shows all the anti-LGBTQ plus state legislation that's been introduced across the U.S., which means, like, where it stands, whether it's advancing, has passed, or been defeated. And at this moment, 482 anti-LGBTQ plus bills have been introduced. What? It's mind-blowing. So I'll include more links, of course. My question is always, like, what's the root problem? Like, what is the basis for these bills? And nothing, really, nothing more than hate. And I did my due diligence, and I searched high and low for a group of transgender people causing great havoc and harm in their states that would warrant any anti-transgender bill being introduced. And you know what? It doesn't exist anywhere. And there just isn't a reason that exists for kids and adults to lose their rights, to lose access to things that they need, just based on fear and misinformation. Like, it's insane. Transgender people do not pose a threat to anyone. So how does a cisgender ally help convince society to stop this hate towards transgender people? Or how do we, like, introduce a conversation to somebody who believes that transgender people are awful somehow? So I've listed a couple of ways that I've sort of, like, keep coming up in the areas that I research. Education, right? Raise awareness by learning about the transgender community, and then you can sort of pass on what you've learned and share resources, right? So read, watch, listen to people who are transgender. Learn why someone has come out as transgender. Nobody wants to come out as transgender and be hated like this. Like, it's not something that people are doing for fun. They're doing it because they need to do it, right? So just pay attention to what transgender people go through and how they are suffering by not getting the care that they need, how they're being forced to use different bathrooms, and not just the adult transgender men and women. Learn how kids are not being allowed to get the care that they need as transgender youth. Hear how parents are scared for their transgender kids And they really fear that they might have to move, or they can't even afford to move, maybe, to a safer, more accepting place, right? Show up. Be there for your transgender friend. Go out with them and have a good time like you did before they came out. I love that my spouse's male friends still grab a beer with her, and her female friends meet up with her. And when I had to miss a comedy show recently, a male friend stepped up and joined her instead. Don't waste time worrying about what other people think. Enjoy the people in your life who really matter, who are there for you, and vice versa. Speak up. If you hear something negative being said about a transgender person, find a way to offer resources or talk about, the transgender people in your life. And I do this also. I try to leave politics out of it, right? This is just simply about standing up for your fellow human. Like, this doesn't have anything to do with politics. We're just people looking out for each other. But some people don't think that way. So please be smart about your approach when speaking up. Keep yourself safe. And vote. Study the candidates in your area. Vote for every election, big or small. Make your own informed decision. Don't just vote for somebody because everybody in church says that's the best person, or your best friend's husband is voting for that person, so they must be great. Learn about your candidates. Don't take your ability to vote for granted. So I know that this episode barely scratches the surface of transphobia and misogyny, but it's a huge, huge topic, and I'm just trying to introduce you to it and hope that maybe you'll check out some of the resources and learn something. But it's huge. There are other categories that go along with this in the transgender community, like racism and misogyny towards transgender people. It's huge. As a spouse of a transgender person trying to raise a son in this anti-trans environment, I'm just sick of it, and I just wanted to kind of get it out there. What's going on? That transgender people are not what the society and these articles and this anti-trans agenda is trying to portray transgender people as. And I'm tired of these anti-transgender bills being introduced. And I'm really tired of hearing or reading these misinformed and repetitive scripts that are just based on hate. That's all it is. It's empty. There's no content. It's just hate. And, I hope people who are just stuck in a hateful mindset can find a way to snap out of it and think, maybe I should get to know a transgender person before I spew this nonsense. Maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. Sometimes people surprise us, right? So next episode won't be as as down. I'm gonna try to keep it a little bit lighter. It's just been really hard to see everything happening and read everything in the news. So until next time, life is short. Stand up and show up for the good ones. All right, take care of each other.